despite the theories of so-called scientists, the vast quantities of water on this planet and on other planets are not created by a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. Rather, the water is sometimes explained to be the perspiration and sometimes the semen of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is from water that all living entities emerge, and because of water, they live and grow. If there were no water, all life would cease. Water is the source of life for everyone. Therefore, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we have so much water all over the world. Interesting. Ambastu yad reta udara viryan sidyanti jivant yuta vardamana lokayato takila lokapala prasidatam na samaha vibhuti. The entire cosmic manifestation has emerged from water, and it is because of water that all living entities endure, live, and develop. This water is nothing but the semen of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, may the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has such great potency, be pleased with us. Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadama Amtadati Swadharatikam Panchakapatribhyascha Kritisindhireva Chapadidana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasani Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here, this is Lord Brahma continuing his prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for protection on behalf of the demigods, the controllers, the rulers of the universe, who were finding themselves perplexed because they were under attack, or yes, like that, in a difficult situation. The demigods in a difficult situation. They're all devotees, at least to one degree or another. At least basically, they are devotees, although they also have some material aspects to their consciousness and their attitudes and desires, and in this way it's reflected in their activities. But fundamentally, they are devotees. So they found themselves perplexed in a worrisome situation that was beyond their capabilities to address and to correct. So they appealed to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma appealed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or he is appealing here. So he's appealing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prasidata me. Here, prasidatam na. May you be pleased with us. And this word prasidatam, this is connected with the word prasad. So literally it's being translated prasidatam na. You be pleased with us. But the context of and the sort of underlying theme of that mood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead may have in being pleased, in expressing and manifesting his being satisfied or being pleased by the demigods. It is implicit within these prayers and within the way that Lord Brahma is addressing the Lord. It is implicit that part of his being pleased and showing him that he is pleased would be to be merciful and give protection, to the demigods who are in this difficult situation. So Lord Brahma, as we mentioned on Sunday, he's addressing the Lord very appropriately. It is not just some blind scream for help or just calling out. Of course, that may be there. That may be there. If the devotee is calling out from the heart, then Krishna will certainly hear. Just like Srila Prabhupada said about our chanting, we should try to chant nicely. And particularly Srila Prabhupada said we should try to chant just like a child cries out for the mother. So we've all had experience of that. And we know that it's when the child is really crying out, then it is, there's nothing else that the child is looking for or that the child would be satisfied with. Others may come. Srila Prabhupada made this point, actually. Some uncle may come, the grandparents may come. If the child is crying out in that sort of like absolute sense of dependence and need for the shelter of the mother. So if the child is calling out like that, in a mood of total shelter, taking shelter of the mother, then anyone else may come. Anyone else may come. And they may be very nice. And they may want to give that type of comfort and care to the child, but the child will not accept that. And I think we've seen that also many times. The child, the other person may be trying in so many ways to speak nicely and pat the child and so on and so forth, expressing some affection and concern, but the child is not satisfied until the child is in the hands of the mother. And then when the child is in the hands of the mother, then very quickly the child is pacified and life looks positive again for the child in the childish way of the child. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada has expressed himself like this, that when we chant, that we are dependent actually on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We may not always be conscious of that fact. Oftentimes we may think that we are independent, that we are here to do our own thing, we can do our own thing, and God, if there is one, He is there simply to help us do our own thing and to make sure we get what we want by doing our own thing and that we're successful in doing our own thing and so on. But He is more just some sort of secondary factor. And the main thing is that we are very good and expert and capable, and we are achieving. We are doing our thing and we're going to be successful. I did it my way, as the man sang one time. I think perhaps not long before he died. Of course, I don't even know if he is dead. Is Frank Sinatra dead?
Yeah.
Is he? Okay. Okay. I was not aware of that. Okay, fair enough. So it's like that. I did it my way, and then I died. Then I died hopelessly, helplessly. And that was not my way. That was some other way. So that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So actually, we're always completely dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all respects at every second. Even we're sitting here, we're breathing and listening and living at least. These very basic things are going on in our existences. But if the Supreme Personality of Godhead decides that it is our time, then we may be sitting comfortably here and listening or doing anything. But then all of a sudden, there was this one famous yogi. You may have heard of Paramahansa Yogananda. He also came to the Western world and did some preaching and established something, just like, various others, the Maharishi and various others. So he came also and did something. Then one night he was in America at some sort of banquet, and he gave a speech in front of sort of respectable and affluent people. He was trying to move in those circles. He gave a speech and he sat down. Well, actually, I think he gave a speech standing up, and while he was standing up, he just fell over. And that was it. That was it. You might think improbable. And he was not that old. He was 59, so not very old. There he was, in a special occasion for his honor, standing up, giving a speech about whatever it may be. So many people watching and listening. Suddenly, he fell over. And that was it. He died. So actually, we're always dependent in all respects. We may think that, no, I'm sitting here, I'm breathing, and in this way I'm not dependent. I'm listening. In this way I'm not dependent. I'm thinking. In this way I'm not dependent. But actually we are dependent. If Krishna wants, he can stop us breathing. He can stop us breathing. He can stop our sense of hearing. All these things are under his control. Yes, he can stop our lives. And sooner or later he will. Sooner or later he will. Somehow that will happen. And it will be under his control completely. And now it is also, but that we're not so conscious of. So here, we are saying that Srila Prabhupada has advised us, has instructed us, that when we chant, we should try to take it very seriously, not as a routine matter, but as a very serious communication and connection with Krishna. And we should do that just as a child cries out for the mother, that is, when the child is really crying out, in that completely helpless, dependent way, which stimulates the mother to immediately come and be willing to do anything for that child. So this is going on. This is going on. We've all seen that many times, that type of situation. So in our relationship with Krishna, we should also try to cultivate that sort of sense of dependence, because we are dependent. And any idea, any conception that we may have within our minds of not being so dependent, of being less dependent, or actually not being dependent at all, then we should know this is just a misconception. It's just a misconception. Actually, we're always dependent. Yeah, we're always dependent. So Lord Brahma here, we were saying that he he is praying in a very self-controlled, very composed and very orderly way that he's thinking and expressing himself. He's not just crying out like a child, crying out for the mother. That is not so orderly or well composed usually. But even if we are not so well cultured and self-controlled and so on, like Lord Brahma, even if we're not able to express ourselves as appropriately and nicely and intelligently and logically, and even if we just call out, Krishna, help. But if we call out in a dependent way, then Krishna will hear and Krishna will reciprocate. There's no doubt. So this practice of praying, crying out, first of all appreciating and then expressing our dependence on Krishna. This is a very important part of Krishna consciousness. In fact, it is a fact that if we do not cultivate this, and if this mood does not develop in time at least, then that is an indication that internally that not so much advancement is taking place in terms of realization, because this is very much a reflection. Our capacity in this respect is very much a reflection of our realization. Have we realized? Is it like a real conviction and like a practical reality in our lives that we are so dependent and we shouldn't, that we're not independent, and that we're always in need of Krishna's shelter, and that there's a great need for us to express that and always be chasing that. So how clear is that realization within our hearts, really? Or is it just some sort of philosophical idea in some other part of our minds? Those philosophical ideas which I suppose I agree with, but I haven't really digested so much. So of course Lord Brahma, he is both actually. He is both on the level of being very self-controlled and expressing himself very clearly and nicely and in very appropriate ways, intelligently, philosophically and so on. He is both on that level and on the level of that deep sincerity and true, heartfelt dependence, and expressing in that true mood of heartfelt dependence. Lord Brahma, he is the head of our sampradaya. He is certainly a very great devotee in pure Krishna consciousness. But he's so advanced that he's doing both. So here in this verse, Lord Brahma is expressing another aspect of our dependence and showing his very clear appreciation of our dependence. He says, just like we are dependent on water. If you take the water away, then you take our lives, at least shortly. Very, very shortly, actually. It will only be a matter of days. And our lives will be taken also. Why? Because the water was taken. So, we are dependent on water. Not just we, but all life. All life is dependent on water completely. So if we take away water, then we take away life. Just like if there's a drought, or in some desert area where there's it's just the natural state of affairs that there's a permanent drought. So when you go to some desert, or some area where there's been severe drought, then you see all the life is fading away. Maybe it's already faded away. Yes, in many deserts it's like that. But sometimes, even in a desert, if sometimes there's rain, then sometimes even in the desert, then you come back the next day, a few days later, and various little plants are popping up out of the sand. But then, because that rain is just once on a rare occasion, then after a while, because there's no more rain, then all those little plants which came up and started living and doing their thing, they all just die off again. So we're dependent on water. And even in the beginning, what was there within this universe? There was only water. That's all. Lord Brahma came out on top of the lotus flower, and he looked around, and there was water down there. And that was where he had come from. Yes, and what was that water? It was not just some, as Prabhupada says, just some mixture of hydrogen and oxygen, some circumstantial combination of certain particular basic elements, and suddenly, oh, now you've got another thing called water, and that's very nice. No, that water in the beginning, what was that? It was the perspiration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And even in the verse, Lord Brahma says that this perspiration, it can also be considered to be the semen of the Supreme Lord, because after all it is semen which is the life-giving element, which contains life. So this water is very amazing. The living entities, when they fall down from the higher planets, they fall down in the water. They fall down in the rain. We're completely dependent on rain. And where is that on water? And where is that water coming from? It is coming from Krishna. It is either his perspiration or his semen, but one way or another, it is some part of his own nature, of himself. So what does that mean? We're dependent on the water, means we're dependent on Krishna. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Rasoham apsu konteya prabhasmi shashi surayo. I'm the taste of water. I'm the light of the sun and the moon. Just like water is necessary, so sunlight and moonlight is necessary. Even if you have water, but if you try to produce plants, or even human beings, whatever, with no light, just in darkness, no sunlight, then, again, it's very difficult. Without sunlight, then no vitality will be there. And what is that sunlight? That Krishna says, I am the light of the sun and the moon, and so many things, and everything actually. So Lord Brahma, very astutely, and also in a very devotional way, he's bringing out this fact as he makes his prayers, that we are dependent on you in this way, we're dependent on you in that way, you're maintaining us, you are keeping us alive in this way, you're keeping us alive via the water, so now you please keep us alive through this danger. The demons are attacking us, so you please, just as you are protecting us by manifesting water, so you protect us. Just do the same thing. We're not asking you to do some other thing, some extraordinary thing. We're just asking you to do the same thing, but just do it in another way, just step in and smash the demons, that's all. And that would be very nice. So, prasidatam na. You please be pleased with us and extend your mercy in this way also. Hare Krishna. So we're cutting our program short today so we can receive His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Maharaj. So we'll finish here. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.